So what you're watching is basically a courthouse in Louisville, Kentucky. Now, this courthouse, as you can see, is being boarded up by workers who are working expeditiously to accomplish their duties. Now, the question that you're probably going to ask me immediately is, Jamarl, why are they boarding up a courthouse in Louisville, Kentucky? I am so glad you asked that. Because the Attorney General in Louisville, Kentucky, a gentleman named Daniel Cameron, will be coming out to give a press conference on the Breonna Taylor case. Now, if you are seeing them boarding up the courthouse and you hear that a press conference is coming out about Breonna Taylor, what is the first thing you're going to think of? It's going to be bad news. And it's going to be bad news in a way that people are going to burn shit down. Here's the catch, though. He came out and he gave basically a fart in a jar. And to be honest, a fart in a jar would have perhaps given more information, but there is something here that I don't want you to miss out on, and I think is important in giving across a certain degree of perspective in regards to his tenor, and the tenor, for this matter, of Kentucky itself. I want to go through the press conference that he gave. I want to point out some items in that, but I also want to point out the larger context of what I think is taking place behind the scenes in the Breonna Taylor case. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. This content is brought to you by you, and I thank you for the opportunity to do it. Boarding up the courthouse in Louisville, Kentucky, people are nervous. Why are they nervous? Because Breonna Taylor was shot unjustly by maniacs barging into the house in the dead of night, plainclothes officers not addressing or not announcing who they are, given about 30 seconds for the people in the house to figure out what's going on. The gentleman who was in the house with Breonna Taylor had a weapon, legal owner, fired that weapon at the maniacs who was barging into his house. He had every right to fire that weapon. He, after all, was protecting his house from a band of thick-necked goons who was trying to basically, from his perspective, barge in. Cops, plainclothes, open up a barrage of bullets, 20, if I'm not mistaken. They missed the gentleman, Breonna's boyfriend. 6 of them riddled her body with bullets. If I'm not mistaken, she was basically in her underclothes. Nobody has been charged with anything in this case. And it must be understood, what they did in barging into that house like that was illegal. It was illegal. I'm going to explain why it was illegal. But I want to first show you the prosecutor, the Attorney General, give his statement in regards to what has taken place in the Breonna Taylor case. The cops had already caught the people who they needed to get. And yet and still they decided to barge into this house anyway. Neither of the people who were in there were lawbreakers. One of the cops gets shot in the leg from the boyfriend, but he's okay. Breonna Taylor is in the ground. This is utter appalling case. And the fact that these guys are still walking around is obscene. The key point, though, is cops, 99% walk. No charges. Despite the fact they kill over 1,000 a year. So, up to this point, there's nothing unique about this. If anything, the unique part is the acute focus that we've started to put on African Americans being killed by cops. It's almost like Negroes are in vogue within the context of being killed by cops. Beyond the point of being killed by cops, the public has started to take drastic shifts in their perspective in regards to bias, bias within the context of policing, whether or not police are honest, even from the standpoint of whether or not we have a civil rights issue in this country, despite the fact that nothing materially has changed on that front between Trump and Obama, with the exception of a racist president in office. Let's take a look at Cameron give his speech in regards to what's currently taking place. I'm going to play maybe a couple of minutes just so you get a full idea of what he's saying.
Thank you for being here. I want to take an opportunity to discuss our office's role as special prosecutor in the ongoing investigation into the death of Ms. Breonna Taylor. I want to be clear at the outset of this conference that it's informational only. The investigation remains ongoing, and the specifics will not be discussed. But before I go on any further, I just want to say to Ms. Breonna Taylor's family how I continue to be saddened and heartbroken by the loss of a daughter. I know Ms. Tamika Palmer has lost a child. My mother has invested a lot of time and energy into me, and I know if something happened to me, she would certainly be heartbroken as well, as I'm sure Ms. Palmer is feeling. So our continued sympathies and condolences go out to her. Of our law enforcement community, who put on their uniforms every day to protect and serve our communities, and to the peaceful protesters who have used their voice in an effort to seek positive change.
Just so we're clear, propaganda alert, cops don't protect and serve. That is not their function. That is not their job. That is not what they do. It's almost like saying a company or McDonald's priority is hamburgers. McDonald's priority is not hamburgers. McDonald's priority is profit. Hamburgers is the stupid human trick that they use to get that profit. The same thing to some degree is true with cops. The hamburger is incidental. Yes, it's a feature in the sense of them making profit, but the point is the profit. The hamburger is the thing that they have to do. All things being equal, if you would have just given them the money, they would forego making the hamburger, because again, the hamburger is not the point. And the situation with cops, the issue is not to protect and serve. That is not what they do. Law and order. Cops maintain order, whatever that order is. If maintaining that order means protecting you, yes, they will protect you. If maintaining that order means punching you in the nose and breaking your nose, they will do that too. Law and order. Think about it for the moment. When they were locking up, whether it's Jim Crow, whether it's apartheid, whether it's basic slavery, whatever the system and the organization of that system, cops would be employed to maintain that system. If it was Nazi Germany, they would ensure that the Jews were in their place. I hope you understand what I mean. Cops are, it's liquid in a jar. It's not necessarily an absolute in the sense of protect and serve. The function of the cop is to maintain order. Protect and serve gives this kind of notion that they're out there to try to help you. They're not. If there's a disturbance in your home where somebody is wilding out, well, that's a situation where they need to maintain order again. If there was a situation where a black person was trying to come to your restaurant and you had segregation, the cop would maintain order by escorting that black person out, potentially hitting them with a club in the process. It's not protect and serve. It's maintain order. Let's keep going, though.
We have not given in to calls for violence and looting. To those across the country we've heard from with cards, emails, and letters and calls who are asking us to complete the investigation as soon as possible. We hear you, and we are working around the clock to follow the law to the truth. Everyone involved in this case deserves nothing less. But the Attorney General, the Supreme Court has said that the prosecutor's interest in a criminal prosecution is not that it shall win a case, but that justice shall be done. A prosecutor may prosecute with earnestness and vigor, and indeed he should do so. But while he may strike hard blows, he is not at liberty to strike foul ones.
Are you serious? Are you serious? I love the way people raise up their whatever they do in regards to this kind of Pollyannish, shallow, emancipatory point of view in regards to their particular career because it's their particular career. You believe that you are justice will be done? Is that what you think you're doing? When you're locking up stoners, you believe that's justice? You believe in the overarching universe, in the cosmic sense, that stoners are wrong for smoking pot. So fervently so, you're willing to put them in a cage. And you believe that's right. I understand it's a factor of law, but this gets to my point about law and order. It's not about right, morality, ethics, justice, none of that stuff. Sometimes it may intercede those things, but oftentimes it has nothing to do with those things. Throwing out somebody in an eviction in the middle of a pandemic. Cops, yeah, they will do that. What about Kamala Harris terrorizing a mother, homeless mother, working 2 jobs with 2 kids for truancy violations? As if the issue was her kids going to school as opposed to her not having a house. Was that justice? Basically, a fart in a jar for a press conference. That's all it is. But he is getting something across, whether he realizes it or not. It bleeds through. It gets to the point of the case, really. Meaning, in him not saying really anything about the case, he ends up actually saying quite a lot about the case. I don't mean to be confusing, but it is true. There are a few points. Why are they boarding up the courthouse? They're boarding up the courthouse because they're concerned that people will burn that shit down, just like they burnt down that police station. The leaders don't want to deal with that. At risk if those protesters goes through ravaging shit as they go along, because there's going to be a percentage that is going to be rowdy, whatever that percentage is, and will try to burn those places down. They don't want that. His time frame and the time that it's taking him to do that, I would argue, indicates that he is looking for a charge. Now, the difficulty in charging cops is because oftentimes people give them a skew in regards to their word, meaning they get a higher reverence in regards to what they say, despite the fact that they're flagrant liars against John Q. Public. It's a difficult prosecution. That's the kind of point that I'm getting at. I was looking up the stats on this stuff. I've been looking up stats, a lot of stats actually recently. The National Police Misconduct Reporting Project analyzed 3,238 criminal cases against police officers from April 2009 to December 2010. They found that only 33% were convicted, and 36% of the officers that were convicted ended up serving sentences. Think about that. You have a situation in your country where 99% of killings by cops result in no charges. They kill over 1,000 times a year. 99% resulting in no charges. And then, when you finally get the charge, 33% get convicted. And of that 33%, 36% serve a sentence. What he is doing is taking his time to try to find a way of going after those cops. Because the last thing he wants is for that Louisville, Kentucky to burn. And he hopes that the public gives him enough time to do what he is trying to do. Yes, he's going to be fair in this, but he's motivated in his reasoning in the sense of these other places have been convicting cops. This is a Me Too moment for cop convictions. When these cops are not convicted for these type of crimes, the public has a zero tolerance policy at this point, seeing that there are millions of people already still in the streets marching. We don't want to take that fire. Let's do our job. sacrificial lambs. Now, the catch here is those cops broke into the house, which was illegal. To make that point that much more clear, Washington Post is recording and basically says the no-knock warrant for Breonna Taylor's home was illegal. In a 1995 case, Wilson versus Arkansas, the court recognized for the first time the Castle Doctrine and the knock and announce rule were embedded into the Fourth Amendment. The Castle Doctrine, which dates back to half a century, or dates back to a century in English law, states that the home should be a place of peace and sanctuary. Accordingly, except for the most extreme circumstances, the police must knock, announce themselves, and give time for the occupants of the home to answer the door peacefully before they commit the maximum justice. Now, the catch here is that there's a quirk in this. The cops said, well, wait a minute. Some people have drugs, and if we have to do that and take that much time, they're going to get rid of the drugs. So they put a loophole in it for drugs. Now, because of the loophole, everybody had drugs. So the Supreme Court realized, okay, you can't use that, and they ripped that away from them. Meaning, what those cops did here was illegal, and the pursuit of everything after that was also, by definition, illegal. Just because that may be true doesn't necessarily mean that's sufficient to convict. And that's the rub. I strongly suspect that the reason he's taking so much time is he is looking for a reason. He's trying to find anything that he can find, something that he believes that can stick. Because the last thing he wants to do is come out and say no charges, and that place goes haywire. And I promise you, it will. This case is utterly appalling. George Floyd was heart-wrenching because you could see the dehumanization of the cops and that man. For him, a grown man, to cry out for his mom, think of the situation to which he must have found himself in as he laid there, basically pleading bloody murder for his life. And as four cops who was there to protect and serve commenced with the murdering. It's heart-wrenching. Breonna Taylor's is just as bad. You just didn't see it. To walk into and knock down a door, what is it like to be sitting in that room, everything's calm, everything's good, and somebody is banging on the door like they've lost their goddamn minds, like they're literally trying to knock the door down? You grab your weapon. You point that weapon. And whatever's coming in this house, I'm going to put him down. He could have shot multiple shots when those cops came in. It seems like he just shot one and hit the guy in the leg. But they opened fire with 20 rounds. They didn't give a shit where those rounds went. Those rounds could have went into other people's houses. Those rounds could have went into people who were walking outside. They didn't care. That's the same thing in the Rashawn Brooks case. They didn't care. One of those rounds ends up hitting somebody's car who had an occupant in the car. What if it was a baby? What if it was a person walking? The catch here is the discharge of the weapon honestly needs to be curtailed. And whoever gave this no-knock warrant should also, and actually, no, it's the cops. They did it. They did it. Look, I honestly think that these guys are trying to find charges to put on them. I suspect strongly that that's why it's taken that long. You can tell that they are fearful because they are boarding up the city. And this particular speech of we're doing everything that we can, I'm going to have a fair trial, it's going to be honest, it's going to be great, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Give me some time, give me some time. He's begging for time because he doesn't want them to set off. If the Breonna Taylor thing comes back and they have no charges, that place will go up in flames. Like, this is one of those cases that have reached into the heartstrings of various communities. And you have a public that is clamoring for them to press charges. And a prosecutor that is looking for charges to press. Because the leniency from the standpoint of the law in regards to cops is so vast, and they get so much latitude in regards to force. If those cops thought their life was in danger, an argument may be made that it legitimized the use of force. And it's possible that that's where the sticking point is in regards to the case. Yes, they broke down the door. By the same token, does an officer have a right to fire on somebody else who fires on them? And if they see somebody fire on them, do they believe that their life is in danger at that moment? Yes, they do. Now, the fact that they were in the commission of a crime may not matter. And it didn't matter in Trayvon Martin's case. Trayvon Martin beats the shit out of a guy who's following him. The cops tell him to go home. He refuses to go home. And he engages and then shoots the kid and walks. It's as if the kid didn't have a right to stand his ground. Well, this is kind of a similar situation, right? You basically have somebody who is the aggressor. The person who's responding to that is perfectly within their right to respond to it. But the very fact that they responded allows a counter response to which the law may look at and say, well, cops have certain leniency, and if they believe their life is in danger, they can fire the round, even if they're committing a crime, especially if the crime might have been an accident. There's all sorts of legal reasoning that can go into this notion of trying to defend that particular position that he may be trying to undo. So, I haven't seen any news of anybody knocking on breaking windows, so I'm going to make the assumption that he's getting the time that he asked for. Like, share, and subscribe. Yeah, like, share, subscribe. Thanks all.